Well, hi guys, it's that time. It's our Bible teaching snippet of the day. Well, yesterday I asked everyone at the end of my snippet if they would just let me know what they wanted me to teach on, if they wanted me to stop moving toward the cross and teach on communion, which is the Lord's Last Supper. That's recorded in all four Gospels. And so I am going to stop and I'm going to teach on communion. Now watch this. This is where I'm going to have to be real straightforward, to the point that if you're very religious, like indoctrinated with a lot of teachings, you may be offended. So I'm just going to tell you right now that what I'm going to teach is straight out of what the Greek says, and I'm trying to correct a bunch of wrong junk that we believe. And if you get offended, I can apologize, but I'm not going to change my stand on what God has revealed to me and what I have studied in the Greek wording of the entire book of Corinthians, okay? So let me get started, and I have no doubt that I will have to do this for 2 days in a row because this is a pretty deep teaching, okay? And again, my purpose is to change the way that believers look at communion and the value of it, okay? So here we go. Let me start with saying this, that Paul, in chapter 1, verse 11, he clearly states that he is writing to them to correct some things. Paul has been told a lot of different stuff going on in this new little gathering of believers, and it is just a madhouse. And he is strategically addressing different issues that he has been asked to put in writing and send to this group of baby believers. Now, I think I just hit on something I need to cover in chapter, and I'm just going to get over here in my notes because I want to be very strategic like Paul was, because I want to be clear. Okay, in chapter 3, verse 1, I'm going to read this. It says, brothers and sisters, so they're believers. In the past, I could not talk to you as I talk to spiritual, mature people. I had to talk to you as I would to people without the Spirit, carnal, fleshly, babies, infants in Christ. I want to set that standard right there. Paul is entering into this letter understanding that none of these people are very grown up in the Lord. They're all babies, they're confused, they don't know what's going on, and it's a mess, guys, okay? As my little kid Courtney would say, that's a hot mess. And it was a hot mess for Paul. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is this. He knows he's so harsh in this letter that the next letter that he writes, which we have as 2 Corinthians, he tells them 3 different times, watch this, how bad he feels for having to write the letter that he wrote. I'm in, wait a second, let me get that. 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 4, watch this. For I wrote to you out of great sorrow and deep distress of heart, and yes, with many tears, not to cause you pain, but in order to make you realize the overflowing love that I continue and increasingly have for you. Now, in 2 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 8 and 9, and then again in verse 12, he says again, he mentions 1 Corinthians to them again and tells them how much sorrow it was for him to have to write to them such a harsh letter. Okay, so now I want to give you this little tidbit of information. 1 Corinthians is not 1 Corinthians. The first letter he wrote, he makes reference to in 1 Corinthians 5:9. He says, my previous letter that I wrote to you, I warned you not to be closely associated and hang around with unchaste, impure people who are sexually immoral. So actually, what I'm proving to you right now, it's just something for you to know, 1 Corinthians is actually 2 Corinthians. and 2 Corinthians is actually 3 Corinthians. We are missing the first letter he wrote. And so it's not confusing. They just put it in here and put it 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians because that very first letter is missing. Now, let me get over here and see, I haven't even gotten to the actual communion because I have to, look guys, I have to lay a groundwork for you to understand what Paul is fixing to start talking about when I get over here in chapter 11. And I'm going to start here, okay, in verse 17, because this is where now look, like I said, all through this letter, he's going from one problem to another problem and then another problem, and he's just laying out all of the answers to the issues that this church was having. So here we go. It says here in verse 17, he says, in the things I tell you, now I do not praise you. So he's letting them know he's not happy. I do not praise you because when you come together, you do more harm than good. First, I hear that when you meet together as a church, you are divided. There's divisions and arguments among you. And I believe this about some of you. And then he starts talking about the errors and controversy. And then it says that when you come together to meet as a congregation, are you not really eating the Lord's Supper? Is this not about God? And it says the worship meal Jesus told his followers to celebrate in remembrance of his death. And this is because when you eat, each person is eating without waiting for all the others. The wealthy church members are arriving early to avoid sharing the poorer members. Get it? Such social distinctions were common in the Roman world. Okay, so what I want you, now watch, I want to go one more step. It says, and some people don't even get enough to eat, while others have too much to drink and are getting drunk. Do you despise and have contempt for God's church, and so embarrass and humiliate those who are poor and have nothing? What should I tell you? Shall I praise you? I will not praise you for doing this. Okay, I want to stop here today, but I want to wrap this up. You see, he is correcting what they're doing in a big full course meal. They're getting there early, eating all the good ribeye steaks and leaving the crap, the French fries for the poor people that get there later because they can't get there in time to get to the good food. And the next part he talks about is the wine, obviously. Here's another correction, that none of the wine was fermented and it wasn't alcoholic. I've never seen anybody get drunk on grape juice, okay, guys? This was fermented wine. Are there two different kinds? Absolutely. There's the juice of the vine that can be just grape juice, but right here it's obvious this was fermented because people are getting drunk. So I want to stop right here today, and tomorrow I'm going to pick up and explain to you what Paul is correcting, and now I'm going to correct what the church is doing as a wrong reaction to this correction that Paul did. I'll see you right here tomorrow on Facebook. Bye-bye.